Hey everyone, welcome to Handing the Shame Back, a show dedicated 100% to all the amazing adult survivors of child sexual abuse across the world. We know the numbers are staggering, we know that people struggle, and this is just one way that people can feel a sense of community and that you are not alone. We stand with you. Each week I bring you, and it's my honour to do so, a guest to the show. And as you know, there are always going to be survivors. Why? Because we need a special place in the sun where we can just relax, understand and learn from each other. So as with all shows, there is a trigger warning, and we do this because I don't want you feeling upset or uncomfortable. If for whatever reason you start to feel triggered, please do stop watching, go to the show notes below, and you'll be directed to some help and resource. In the meantime, join me in welcoming Greg Evans to the show. Now, Greg is a survivor from Dilworth School. He's an advocate, he's an entrepreneur, he's an advocate blogger. He does many things actually, and I haven't quite got to the bottom of it all, but all I know is I'm thrilled to see him here. He's with us all the way from Perth. Welcome to you, Greg.
Hi, Gloria. Thanks for having me.
Very welcome. And I see behind you, you've got that image, We Were Children and Dilworth School. So, you know, as usual, what we tend to do, Greg, is we just start at the beginning. We start with whatever you are comfortable to share about your experience of child sexual abuse, and then we move on to perhaps what you're doing now or ways that you've managed to overcome this. You see, every survivor has something to offer, they just don't realize it.
Yeah,
So Greg, what's okay for you to share with us today? What's your story?
yeah, okay. Well, thank you, Gloria. I went to Dilworth School in the 70s, from 74 to 77, 3 years, 4 years just about that I spent there. Um, and of course, a lot of it, I think, um, psychologically, I blocked a lot of the memories and have repressed memories, or had repressed memories, that a lot of things have come out that I never remembered once we started going down this path with the Royal Commission and the Dilworth Inquiry. Um, I had triggers during the Royal when I was presenting evidence at um, the Royal Commission, um, into abuse in New Zealand. But I'll get into that. I think probably better to give the history a little bit. I did have a period of depression, um, that I think it was probably because I had some pain and injury. I was taking painkillers at the time, and I don't know. I noticed sometimes when you come down from painkillers, it puts you into a depressed state. And at some stage, I went through, I think this is sort of back in about 2016, I went through this period, that caused me to see my doctor. I was having suicidal thoughts and what have you, and didn't know really why. He referred me to hospital. And funny enough, when they started interviewing me at hospital, I had this huge panic attack, and I didn't know where the emotions came from at the time. Um, and I was referred to a psychiatric hospital. Um, but all I know is that when I started thinking about Dilworth, um, all these emotions came out for hours. And I couldn't understand why, because I didn't remember anything that bad from Dilworth that could bring this on. And I had to leave the psychiatric hospital due to employment. Obviously, you've got to provide income and things like that, keep going. And so the whole thing just got forgotten about. Then and I never gave it another thought. I got through that period, carried on. Then anyway, I heard about the Royal Commission and of course Operation Beverley with Dilworth. And one of the things that I did remember about Dilworth was an assault by a senior when I was a junior. And this assault happened to me where I was just walking through a common room. He was coming in the other direction. And as I was going past him, he hit me in my left eye, a whack of punch. So I not only was he twice my size, a Maori guy, you know, he was in the first 15 rugby team at the moment. This guy was like, you know, from the age that I was, you'd use the terminology built like a brick shit house. Yeah, he hit me pretty bloody hard, that hard that my eye whited out. I couldn't even see out my eye. And my nose started to bleed quite profusely. And I put my hand over my nose and went to the bathroom. And eventually it stopped bleeding and my vision in my left eye slowly came back. And then again, you just move on and you put that behind you. Well, funny enough, 20 years after I left Dilworth, I get diagnosed with sleep apnea. And I see a sleep specialist who tells me that before I do a sleep study, I need to clear up the airways for breathing for a possible sleep machine. And that before I do this, I should see an ear, nose, and throat specialist, because if I've got tonsils, that could be an ear obstruction, which I did have my tonsils still in. Anyway, I see an ear, nose, and throat specialist, and he has a look and he turns around and says to me, Greg, do you know that the fine part of the bone in your nose is broken and it's bent over, and you're only breathing through one side of your nose? And I had no idea that this impact that I had when I was at the school, that I'd actually been breathing 20 years through one side of my nose. And so anyway, he had to do, I think I had 3 operations at the same time where he fixed my nose. And I took my tonsils out, and there was, I think, yeah, where you snore, tightened up the flap or something. So it was a big deal. And anyway, so you move on with that, get on with your life. And then another 20 years later, you know, as you get older, your eyesight starts to deteriorate, you need glasses. And so I go to, it's my first time to get an optometrist to look at glasses. And the optometrist says to me, you've got some unusual things in your left eye. He says, I'd like to refer you to an eye specialist to have a closer look at that. I see the eye specialist, and the eye specialist says to me, you must have had a serious impact to your left eye sometime in your life, and you've actually got partial blindness in your left eye. And I said, and he used the example, if you imagine I got to your eye with a marker and drew little dots on your eye. And I said, well, why can't I see these holes in my vision? He basically said, these are holes in your vision. And I said, well, why can't I see these holes? And he said, because your brain fills in the gaps. And that's why. But you've actually got blindness in your left eye, and that can only have come from an impact to the eye. So I've had that all my life as well. And I always knew my left eye was weaker than my right eye. And even today, my glasses have to fix up my left eye much more than it does my right eye.
And the body never forgets. And I think just, thank you for that, because I think it's a really healthy reminder for our survivors watching, Greg, that, no matter what you are told, no matter whether your memories have always been with you or you, as you said, repress, and the repression is to protect us as survivors from the horror of the reality. The point is, your body never forgets. So whatever has happened to you is present in you. And I think, Greg, if I may just qualify a little for some of our beautiful survivors who watch us from all over the world. Greg is joining us today as a survivor of the abuse that happened at Dilworth School. And as he described earlier, he was there for up to 4 years, and he experienced sexual abuse on the grounds and at the hands of some of the staff. So that's just to contextualise, Greg, because I realise they won't know what you're talking about. But are you able to share with us just as little or as much as you're comfortable with, kind of the sexual abuse, who it was from, how long that went on?
Yeah, I was actually getting,
You were building up to it.
Yeah, I was moving along the storyline of events. And why the storyline has big importance is because I think probably your survivors, a lot of them are aware that they can't bring their case to court because of a 6-year limitation. Well, what's interesting is because of repressed memories, the 6 years starts when you made aware that you have a claim. And of course, repressed memories actually do you a favor in that area because, of course, you don't realize until you uncover your repressed memories that you have a claim, which means that you're within a time limit to bring a case to court if you so desire. So anyway, coming back to, so I'd forgotten all about this stuff and moved on and was in the hospital and had my issues there. But the next thing was I've got to get involved with the Royal Commission and to tell my story through the Royal Commission. And during my Royal Commission presentation to the Commissioner, I have a panic attack, and I couldn't work it out because I was talking about a boy that had come to me when I was at the school that had been caned. And his caning was severe, that his bottom was black and blue from the caning. We had a guy in the school at the time called Peter Dignan, who was an Olympic rower and won bronze at the Montreal Olympic Games. Well, he was using his strength to cane boys, and we could always tell in communal showers which one had been caned by Dignan, because normally when you get caned, you just see 3 stripes across the bottom. But if they'd been caned by Dignan, their butts were black and blue. And anyway, I remember, well, this is a bit later, this would have been 77 when I was more a senior. And of course, I sort of like, not much I can do about it. Sort of, he was coming to me with the problem, of what had happened to him by this caning. But this triggered me during the Royal Commission into a panic attack in front of these commissioners. And I sort of then started to think, where is this trigger coming from? And I started to think about the times that I was caned at Dilworth. And then I remember caning with Ian Wilson, who is now serving time in jail as one of the pedophiles that he had 26 years at Dulware School abusing children, that I got caned by him. And I sort of didn't remember. I remembered I got caned by him, but had blocked out the real detail of what, just remembered it as a caning, and that was it. And I started to think about it, and the trigger was, and I started to think about it. And so this never came out at the Royal Commission, because it was only because of the Royal Commission I started to think, why am I getting triggered about caning, that made me start to look into my past history at the school. And all of a sudden I go, why was I remembered where at the school I was caned, and I remembered, why am I coming out of the office, the normal office, pulling up my pants, because you don't pull down your pants to be caned, and I then it came to me, and I remembered, oh yeah, now I remember, the crap that I was put through. And literally he made me remove my clothing to cane me, and he made me bend over, and he would cane me, and then normally when you get caned, they sort of whack, 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 you get 3, 4 or whatever you're getting. He took a stroke and then would stand in front of me, and of course your immediate reaction when it stings like that is to stand up, and he's looking at me with no clothes on. Well, I still had my top on but no pants on, and had a smirk on his face. And then he was leaving these big gaps, and so then he would make me bend over again and cane me again, and then stand round the front looking at me again, and he was enjoying it. But I thought he was really angry at me, because basically I'd rebelled. Another incident where I was sexually assaulted by the chaplain, I'll get into, which I think put me in to be rebelling against the school. I deliberately went walking through the classrooms at night, the study classroom, smoking a cigarette in front of the class. And Ian Wilson was the tutor on duty at the time. And anyway, he says, come with me. And I ignored him and went through, said, I've got one more classroom to go through, while I was happily puffing away. And all the other kids thought I was great, because I was rebelling against the school sort of doing this, knowing that I was going to get caned. And so when Wilson was doing this to me at the caning, I thought it was because I'd seriously pissed him off, because I wouldn't come with him when he asked me to. So, of course, I wrote the whole event off as, well, I deserved what I got, you see. Didn't realise that he was a perverted pedophile, and that's why he was getting off on getting me, because and of course, what happened was, when it started to get to 4, I really started to lose it. And I said to him angrily, get up, because he was wasting so much time playing this bloody prank. I said to him, and I was really losing it. I think I was getting this close to attacking him. And I said, get on with it. And I think he realized, because I think he would have carried this on through to 6 or something. And anyway, he finished it at 4. And of course, I couldn't get out the door fast enough. I was in absolute agony. I was pulling up my pants, and so that's why when I was exiting the door, I was still pulling up my pants. Well, of course, being a young teenager at the time, you were worried about somebody seeing you pulling up your pants, that why are you coming out of an office? What went on? I didn't want to be seen as being gay or something. I'm sort of like, you get hit with this emotion of not wanting to be seen, particularly at this school, because you got bullied severely if you were indifferent in any way, if your ears were bigger or whatever, anything different about you, you became a target. And so, and then anyway, I'm having within an hour, of course, this is late in the evening. This is study class, this happened of the evening. Later that evening, I'm in the communal showers, and a mate of mine, who I had even forgotten all about this, who only recently brought me to the attention that he witnessed in the shower blood coming from my buttocks from this caning. And he turned around and made some smart comment, and I actually punched him. But he was a friend, but because I was so traumatized, he was making fun of it. And so he wasn't deliberately doing that, though. We were good mates, and so it was just a suggestion, but I didn't take it well at the time. And I mean, we didn't go into a fight. I didn't punch him hard. It was sort of more a symbolic punch, not a sort of I'm going to beat you punch, that I gave because he was my friend, but I wasn't approving of his making humor of what had happened to me. and and that night I had blood in the sheets and that from bleeding from this caning that I had in my underwear when I took my underwear off. And it was very upsetting. And of course, now I found out today is why I have triggers from this caning event. Well, the other event I happened, which this is psychological, that I had with the chaplain one day. And funny enough, I have a witness today, the same guy that witnessed the result of the caning was with me when I decided to call into the careers office. And he actually waited outside. And I'd actually forgotten again, it was only recent talking with these people today, that you find out things and your repressed memories are coming back. That when I saw that was Reverend Chaplain Taylor, and when I sat down beside him, he was the careers officer as well. When I sat down beside him, he knew me because I'd gone to his electronics class once that he was putting on at his garage, where I had a look at. And so, but I only went there, fortunately, I only ever visited that once. It was lucky, because obviously Taylor was also one of the worst pedophiles they had at the school. When I sat down next to him, he put his hand on my leg and then pushed his hand up to my crutches, sort of like, hi, and at the same time, hi, pretending it was sort of a greeting of some sort. And I immediately stood up and sort of sat further away from him where I was out of his reach, and then asked him about careers. And I said I was interested in being a pilot. And of course, he then changed his demeanor, I think, because I refused his advance, and demoralized me, made out I was too stupid to be a pilot, and that I could never, that I should be thinking about something less meaningful, like working in a factory or something, and that I didn't have the mental ability to be a pilot. And of course, I stood up and walked out, and my mate, I had tears coming out my eyes because he humiliated me.
And this is what, just breathe, Greg. But this is what they do. It's disgusting. I'm so sorry you've had this.
what's interesting is later in life, I got a psychological assessment. I decided I was like doing a a career review. So I got onto a careers specialist who sent me out a software program that you had to, the psycho analyzes you and asks you all these questions, mathematical questions and all sorts of stuff. It just asks you to understand your personality to work out because I just sort of thought, what career would I was bored at the time with what I was doing, and sort of, you rethink your career at different times in life. And you wouldn't read about what that report said, that my best ultimate career was a
Oh,
pilot.
I thought you were going to tell me that come out with your Mensa bloody level, but
No, so this came out later in life that but he destroyed every opportunity I had to
he
do that
did.
career,
Yes, he did. Well, because
because after that,
fear and control work alongside, or they're part of the pedophile repertoire. I think you would agree, and to keep you down and to keep you suffering and to keep you feeling less than. To our lovely survivors watching, we all know that can be part and parcel of it. And you see, Greg, you weren't compliant because it wasn't it wasn't in your nature to just go along with it. So you were trying to pull away from him. You were trying to be the wonderful teenager you were, and of course he had to make sure you weren't going to leave there feeling any level of confidence. So it's just the manipulation and the power and control, really, isn't it? The
it
whole
is.
thing.
And of course, this ruined my schooling career, because
Yeah,
what happened, this school was such that the code of silence allowed for bullying, and I was the type of person that stood up to bullies. I
yes,
wouldn't allow myself to be bullied, so I tried to always give. And of course, the result was you got severely smashed um, in your childhood life, but it also means you rebel against the institution, I think. And that's why the opportunity to start smoking, I had actually been invited to smoke before I joined the school and hated it. A kid offered me a cigarette one time, and I had a puff, and I'm going, what the hell? And I gave it back. There was no way I was smoking. But when I got to Dulware School, it seemed to me to be a way of, not only did it fit you into a particular group that were sort of, I guess, the other people that were smoking again. I know one of the guys I smoked with, his story is worse than mine. And if you think mine sounds bad, his is 10 times worse than mine. And he was another smoker. This is a very good friend that I had at the school. And this wasn't the end. What happened was, of course, I got then, because I let them know that I was smoking, they targeted me. We had a deputy headmaster who, funnily enough, was a smoker, targeted the smokers at the school and caught me again. And actually, the next morning, his name was John Burnett, was the deputy headmaster, called me into the office because I had smoking reform, to introduce me to smoking reform. And he said he got a memo of what I did walking through the classrooms the night before. And he said, oh, if I had have caught you, I would have given you 6. And I said to him, yeah, but I got 4 on the bare ass to him. And he looked at me with bewilderment and sort of like, I don't think he believed me, actually. But I reported that to him, that I'd been caned without clothes on, and he didn't. As I said, he was shocked. I could see that on his face. But this smoking thing ended up. What happened? The school, the principal wrote a letter to my father, which is in my file today, saying, "Oh, Greg had been caught smoking what's wrong with him? Like, because he had deliberately, we think Greg's going through a period of, and of course he was asking questions if the problem was at home with me or something like that. Without the headmaster never asked me any questions about anything. He was.
Whereas the whole thing was centered around all the abuse. So there were obviously, you know, as one of the survivors of Dilworth and the debacle, the absolute criminality that went on there. You know, we know there was a pedophile ring, that we know, I think someone counted there was 11 teachers at the time who were pedophiles, including.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So
It was like,
were you abused by more than one of those teachers?
well, the sexual assaults were like the caning. That was sexual assault as well, because you don't ask kids
Yeah,
to
I
remove
know.
clothes under
Yeah,
any circumstances. So that is
yeah,
sexual assault.
yeah.
The other thing is also sexual assault with the priest, but no, that's as far as the sexual part. Psychological. Also, I was tricked out of leaving the school. That the principal wrote a letter again about my smoking and said to my father that they were looking at expelling me from the school. And anyway, for smoking. And anyway, I was 15 at the time this happened, and my father rang me at the school and said, "Look, they're talking about expel." I said, "Well, what if I get a job? Oh, can I leave before they expel me?" Wanting to get out of the school as quick as possible.
Yeah.
And he said, "No, you can't. Only if you had a job or what have you could you leave the school." So I got a job, um, and the father sort of like, "Oh well, you've got a job, then hey, yeah, well you can go." And when I was telling the principal, funny enough, Pa was actually the headmaster. Pa at the time was my maths teacher, and that year, to my surprise, because I was not really, my marks were sort of, this was the beginning, I think, of 77, and we'd already had a maths exam, and he had ripped into the students in the class because they were not performing well. And he said there were only 2 people in the class that were of an acceptable level. And I happened to have been one of them. To
Wow.
my amazement, because that was the first time I was scoring top of the class, and mathematics was a good subject for me. So when I said to him I was leaving, he said, "What job have you got?" And I said, "A spare parts technician at Autocrat." And he said, "Oh, you're capable of a lot more than that." And I said, "Well, hey, you were going to expel me. What does it matter?" And he says, "We had no intention of expelling you. This was to try and get you to give up smoking." And I said, "Well, it worked." I said, "Because I've got this job and I've made a commitment to start. I'm not, of course, that was an opportunity. I couldn't get out of the school
No,
fast enough."
no.
Um,
So,
uh,
so Greg, just let me bring you back into something here. We know that there's a class action against Dilworth, the school, the teachers that were present at the time, you know, the board, all of that, and rightly so. And of course, what we know as survivors, and our survivors watching feel this as well. Sometimes for us, we experience what we do, and it's beyond horrendous, as you well know, and it's very hard and triggering. But equally among us are people who had to experience, through observing or noticing what was happening to either a close friends or other children, and not being able to do anything to help them. And I guess that's one of the things that as survivors we carry sometimes with us, is that guilt because we couldn't protect or help save. And I just wondered, with everything that went on back at Dilworth in those days, whether you had experienced that awfulness of I can't help my mate, or yeah.
Oh, when you're at the school, you're literally, as a kid, in survival mode. You're scared shitless of looking the wrong way with the seniors because the code of silence allowed for a senior to, so long as a teacher wasn't looking, could bash you without the threat of recourse because he knows you're not going to tell anybody, because if you get, they called it pimping.
Yes.
And if you pimped on somebody, um, you got known to be a pimper, then you're an attraction of all the seniors would just bash you anytime you would have been targeted. So
Yeah.
the code, and this is an interesting question because one of my future vlogs was going to be about how they managed to keep this secret for 60. We've now worked out it went on for 60 years, the cover up of sexual abuse. How did it go? And now we're starting to say, who's good at keeping these types of secrets? Where did the secret start? And we've been starting to investigate. In fact, I was looking to run an episode that was a conspiracy theory. And funny enough, it was your story that got me to looking down a path of what's the relationship with the biggest secret society, and was that secret society in Dulwich? And anyway, on investigations, I heard from a survivor that told me that he was introduced, his father was a Freemason. Oh, no, a friend of his family was a Freemason that introduced him to Dulwich School, or got him into Dulwich School, and that there were two trustees on the board at the time that were Freemasons. And when you look back in even the legacy books make reference that we had a Masonic Lodge award in the school, that one of the principles, which is funnily enough of where the code of silence may have started, was a principle we had that was also a Freemason, and that's acknowledged in the legacy books. So we're starting to think how much of the code of silence actually may have come from the Freemason thing and the cover up, and how much of your story was actually going on at the time and they may have participated. But again, we don't have direct evidence, so it's a conspiracy theory at the moment of just the relationship with Freemasonry and Dulwich School. But definitely, I'm still coming on about my story. I had repressed memories. Another repressed memory I had, and this, you're going to find this one fascinating. When I started the vlogging, because I put my story as the first episode, I had an old Dulwich boy that I went to school with at the time witnessed, and he called it the most horrific event that he'd ever seen at Dulwich happen to me. And there apparently 12, I'd totally repressed this memory. But there was a young Maori guy, well, he was in our class, in our level one night, was walking around whining. And he was doing this for ages, just so like howling. And we believe that now, today, that he was having a memory. He was in a trance. What do you call it? Sleepwalking, and having a bad memory, a nightmare. And he was surrounded by 10, 11 guys of us were watching him, and Peter Dignan was there. Okay, he came in, and what's going on with this kid? The boy's brother turned up as well. What's going on with him? And anyway, he woke up out of this and then realized what he had been doing, I think. He then looked at me and said something about Mary, that I'd said something about Mary or something. And his brother then apparently attacked me and bashed the living shit out of me. And he actually knocked over Peter Dignan, who was 6'3", weighed 100, I think, and 10 kilos, because he was an Olympic rower, bowled him over like he wasn't even there, and jumped on me and pummeled the hell out of me. And this guy said, yeah, that the impacts to my head, he reckoned, were far worse, he reckons, than one punch that I might have got from this guy. Well, the guy that did the one punch hit is the same guy that attacked me, this Maori guy. Well, today, this guy is the headmaster of a Maori school in Auckland.
Wow. Wow.
And in my episode 1, I actually show a picture of him and name him. So,
Greg, what are you, you know, we've probably got around another 10 minutes left. What are you, I guess for our survivors kind of watching and listening to this, there will be some who have been through something similar in terms of being at a school or at a boarding school when abuse occurred and they were powerless as children. What has helped you as a survivor of this in terms of recovery and healing?
I think I find it brings all my emotions when I creativity, and I mean, I find I get a lot of healing out of producing these vlogs, and I because I connect with it, I know exactly where you come from running your channel as well. And Sinead O'Connor, who just unfortunately passed away, was one again. Her music came from her abuse and was one of the biggest advocates for child abuse, ripping up a picture of the Pope, who later turns out to be covering up child abuse in the church. Um, and she got a lot of healing again from writing music about it. And she didn't write music to get fame. She wrote music because she found it helped heal her. And I think people, that suffer abuse, I think you get, if, craft, connect with if you've got an interest in, could be anything from playing music to writing music. Creativity, I think, helps us, and it could be creativity relating to your story. I mean, let's face it, some of the best music artists today write about relationships that they've had, be it good or bad. I think they get a healing process or a moving on process by creativity. So I think the biggest thing, I think, to help survivors move on from the pain is to find their area of, tap into their inner well-being, and find your area of what it is that gives you relief. Your a possible interest, doesn't matter how weird it is, or what it is.
Well, it's interesting you say that because, just as you were talking, I love it because you 100% agree with you. And survivors watching, we're lucky to have this man talk with us today. There are so many different ways you can express, and which one is right for you? It's the one that grabs you. So always trust that. But secondly, Greg, you're going to love this. I wonder if one of us may take up piloting and getting some flying lessons.
Yeah, you're never too old, I guess. Again, I'm not of a light weight, so I don't know that, even though I may have missed out on the career, pilots can't be overweight, and I've always had a weight problem. Mind you, if you enjoy your career, it can be a motivator to lose weight. So I can't really answer that question 100%, but
But we've planted a seed. So
yeah, planted a seed.
creativity is something, you know, the healing. I love the fact that you've used creativity and healing within that. Are there any other areas where you feel this has really helped me to move on from this, or to actually take charge of my life and be
I
free?
do. I found I actually formed, and I've only recently exited mainly because of this vlog. We've got the report coming out, and I'm going to be flat out vlogging after the inquiry report comes. And
Yeah,
it's very time consuming.
yeah.
And before I was doing the vlogger, I started a Facebook group, which was exclusive Facebook group, which was only Dilworth survivors only. And I got a lot of healing out of helping others to get the psychological support they needed. A lot of them were just had a brick wall about Dilworth, and they wouldn't accept anything from Dilworth. And if Dilworth, like they offer a listening service, they were worried that Dilworth was why they call it the listening service, was Dilworth was a listening in. And didn't want to know it. And I encouraged quite a few survivors, and I've helped them in the group, I think, to understand a lot of the programs that Dilworth's putting out, be it good or bad. And and now I've got people in the group that are taking that over. So I've actually, only because it can be quite time consuming that in its own right, and can sometimes, things that can happen in the group will take your focus away for quite a bit of time. And so it's not necessarily time you actually put into the group. Things that are in the group can end up using your thought a lot for a long period. So I've sort of stepped out of that now. It's got over 50 odd survivors in it, and
Mm.
I've got some good people now and we've got also temporary wellness people coming in there when the report is released to support them. But I found supporting other survivors can also be very healing as well. So I recommend to join, and as a group, you can find sometimes as a group with other survivors, um, that there's opportunities to engage in perhaps support activities or things that you will find useful. And the biggest thing I can say to all your viewers, Gloria, is don't close your mind to putting up brick walls. Open yourself up to the opportunities that may come your way, which will help take away the pain. Um,
Oh,
don't put barriers up that, you need barriers for your own security, but just take a few bit of time out, consult, think through things more, because you may be turning down something that could be very helpful to your growth or to your moving forward in your um, journey of recovery.
I really like that you say that, because I think that sense of community, you see, to me, my humble opinion, and to beautiful survivors watching, we're always with you. Child sexual abuse occurs in secrecy. It's done in the silence. It's done undercover. It's evil in that regard. So it makes sense that as adult survivors moving forward, it's very hard for us to find our voices. It's very hard for us to express actually what has happened. So I like what you're saying there with a survivor group or others that maybe have experienced sexual abuse. We get it. We don't need to explain it. We don't need to justify it. We don't need to say, gosh, I'm being triggered, and then explain what triggering is. We all get it because we've all gone through it. And I
Yeah.
think it's that lovely sense of community, or acceptance. You're not alone. You might have been alone as a kid, but you're not alone now. And I think that's really important for healing. So thank you for raising that. Greg, is there anything else you would like to share with us today?
Only that your viewers are welcome to, if they would like to know more about the Dilworth story and what's going on, my channel, which is We Were Children, which is behind me. That's actually the class of 1906, the first Dilworth class of the picture there in their Sunday best. That we uncover the cover-up of how this managed to go on with I think we're now in excess of 200 victims.
Yeah.
We are over 30 pedophiles over the period, and I think we're up as many as 30 suicides, all related to the Dilworth story. And it's going to be on national. When this report comes out, I can only just warn people it's going to be horrific, just what went on in that school. And it's going to be on national television. I think it'll go right around the world. It's going to be huge, and it's unfortunate but it needed to come out. For the right changes to happen. This sort of stuff needs to be known. So we are advocates of, Neil and I went to the Royal Commission and presented the Dilworth Law petition, which I started a petition online to get mandatory reporting. And we're pretty sure, I think, that the Royal Commission is going to support mandatory reporting. Funnily enough, Dilworth School actually said they supported it, along with the Anglican Church. The Catholic Church, not so much.
Well, there you go. We don't even need to go there. Hey, but look, thank you, Greg. There's so much in what you've shared, and I really appreciate that you've reached out to our survivor group here and offered them to follow up and have a look at what you're doing over there. I think it's amazing what you're doing. So please, Greg, stay right there. Don't go anywhere. But just want to thank you deeply from me on behalf of all our beautiful survivors, and to you wonderful ones watching. Thank you so much for your support. To the new people that have joined in the last week or so, we welcome you and grateful to have you on board. So just want to recap. Greg said many things today, but one of the things that stuck with me was talking about the creativity and being able to use that as a way to heal. And if you find what you enjoy in terms of that, for him it's blogging, for others it may be painting, it doesn't much matter, but that's a great way to release. And the other thing he talked about was opening. Don't be afraid to open yourself up to the opportunities that may take away the pain. And I love that, because as we know, we can lose confidence, but just being mindful that you're still a person, you are not just what happened to you. So with that, fabulous ones, I see you, I stand beside you, and I believe you.